We're live on Facebook now.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're doing a surprise minisode. So I hope that is working. And Omar, can you tell if you can hear me?
Let's see.
So we're going to start you with Do Your Podcast.
There you go.
Okay.
It's recording.
All right. All right. So, hi, Reads and Weeds. Shelley here. I'm here with Mark Palmer in his lovely office / studio. And we're playing, what are we listening to?
Jazz Pozvenska.
Okay. And what did you just call it?
Jazz Pozvenska.
No, you said it was.
Oh, it's he was the Miles Davis of Sweden.
Okay. Okay. I'm digging it. And I told him to pick music so that we could talk about Edward Tufte, right? And music that made him think of that, or music that reminds him of that. And he picked it out. Casey's in the background, super duper excited about all the things that we're doing. She's so excited to talk about books. She loves it. Look at how enthusiastic Casey is. So the reason I wanted to do this real quick is, first of all, just to put all this in context, Reads and Weeds, we talk about books and smoke weed. I smoke weed. He's just giving me a few minutes of his work day. It's 2020. We're still kind of in the middle of the pandemic, I guess, from Michigan. So very interesting to be in New York on Long Beach, Long Island, when there's no people around, really. It's not crowded. There's no tourists, really, because it's September. And it might never be like this again, where we can just ride our bikes down the boardwalk with very little crowds. And so it's strange. So a lot of weird things going on with New York City, but I am super duper lucky because I get to visit my old roommate Casey, and she lives in this lovely house right on the beach. My friend Kaylee's with us, and when I got here, I started looking at all the books, and my favorite parts of any bookstore, there's books on home organizing, and there's books on architecture, and there's books on how to draw comics. And I realized this is what Mark and I are going to nerd out about because that's what we love. So so this is Mark Palmer, and I know him through, he married my dear friend Casey, and actually brought the wedding band all the way to Maine for them. So tell me your title, because that will give people a look into why you might love design and data.
My long and boring title,
Yes,
as my
yes,
wife says.
yes, and really do it up. Really do
Senior
it.
Vice President of Data and Analytics and Data Science at Tibco, which is a Palo Alto-based company. And what that really means is I build products for people that are analyzing data and visualizing data.
Okay.
And then automating decisions. So all robots in the world are being powered by artificial intelligence and the information that we can glean from the real world to train them. So that's kind of what I do in my day job.
Okay. Robot trainer.
Robot trainer.
You're basically. So I don't know if you guys have any robot trainer friends, but I do. So that's cool. Actually, on LinkedIn, it's GM of Analytics, Data Science, and Data Virtualization. So what does data virtualization mean?
It's a technique. The world, look at a typical company, they'll have hundreds or thousands or even hundreds of thousands of databases. And so to virtualize them is to make one virtual view of what might be. So like customer data at your bank probably resides in between 30 and 40 different systems. But when you call bank, they want one view.
Right.
So you virtualize the view by pulling all those one things into one profile of Shelley, and then off you go. So it's a technology virtualizes access to very complicated and messy data situations.
Yeah.
Which is very common in the world today.
Yes. And also, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, using the bank idea as messy a messy scene is very, very true right now. Most people's bank situations
Yeah, for
are
sure.
a total mess.
For sure.
So it's good to get that
Yes, the
picture.
world's a mess.
So one of the things I realized when I got was that Mark is also working on a podcast. And so I want you to tell me what,
Mhm.
because what I realized was I just started doing this podcast. I just started it one day. I didn't read up on it. I didn't read a book called How to Do a Podcast. I just showed up at the podcast studio and turned on the microphones and started talking about books. Is doing it a much smarter way, in my opinion. So he's researched how to do a podcast. He's got a whole outline and he's got this equipment set up. So tell me about your podcast and about the equipment that you're using in the program.
Yeah, so we do something called TIPCO Tech Talks. TIPCO Tech Talks, not anything cool. I think your title is much more funny and interesting.
Yeah, but people who love tech talks will
yeah.
get it.
So we're actually going to evolve it to doing a slightly different topic, which is the art of AI, artificial intelligence. So the artistic side or the interesting side of applying algorithms and machine learning and AI and stuff to business problems. So that's going to be sort of the next evolution of it.
Mm-hmm.
Tech-wise, we've got this cool mic that's actually showing up right there in the video.
Know what kind that is.
Yeah, that's a Blue Yeti. It's a pretty famous sort of microphone. A lot of the ones that podcasters use are also used by musicians and things. So that's set up here. We've also got we're on the Macintosh. There's all sorts of really cool software now for I think capturing information, lighting coming in there. So I think lighting is a particularly important thing, which we're not doing the best of because we've got a very nice, bright, shiny day there. So,
right.
Record on Mac. Otter is a great transcription service. There's great podcast publishing platforms that we use. And of course, we just ran a user conference with a series of podcasts and webinars and roundtables that had 4,000 people come to it. And
TIPCO did?
Yeah, TIPCO did. Yeah, we did that all last week, and we used tools like there's one called iSteer, which is it's kind of it's set up to broadcast to very, very large audiences. So when you have 600, 700, 800 people, you use different publishing platforms. So lots of tools that we can talk about.
Wow. So here's something I learned from Mark yesterday. He suggested this Otter transcription. We started talking about it because right now in real time, I'm trying to find someone help me produce this podcast. Have people that through what I want the job to actually look like. And as I was talking about this, he's saying, oh, well, don't you already use this? Have someone who does that and make it easier. And I said, no, I am just probably doing it the hardest possible way. But I know what I want to do and kind of how I want to do it. And what I realized is I get very frustrated with technology. And yesterday, Mark was helping me out with Otter on this very machine that transcribes your episode. I don't know if it can do it real time.
You can.
It can.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if we're doing that right now. That would have been a cool idea.
Yeah.
But as he was troubleshooting on my computer, what I realized is my mantra has been, I'm not good at tech. I don't know how to learn this. I shouldn't even try to learn this. But he just had the exact number of problems that I had with it, but just is patient enough to keep going till it works. So it's not I realized it's not like a learning thing with me. It's just I would have thrown,
Yeah.
The 4 or 5 troubleshooting things you did, I'm like, I've already given up in my mind.
Yeah, in my family, my brother and I are both techies, and so everybody asks us to fix everything having to do with technology, from software to go through the same pain that you do.
Yeah.
so there's
I
no
have
magic.
to know. No, I have to know. Have you always been that way, where you just like could patiently learn, or did you? this is a legitimate question. Like, I want this to be something that I can learn, that I believe I can learn. Is there anything that you get really frustrated trying to learn, or do you just kind of plod and just stick with?
Oh, I mean, actually, I think frustration is part of the whole process. I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm always confused. I'm always confused and frustrated, but that's kind of what I think most programmers are. It's like a big every program that you write is like a big puzzle. You're trying to figure it out. And, like when you're doing you're doing a puzzle, physical pieces. Like, oh, that one didn't fit. Oh, I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna stop doing that corner, or I'm going to try something else, and you're kind of constantly in this pursuit of figuring things out, hitting wall after wall like a maze, right?
Yeah.
I think software the same way. So yeah, it's just that with computers, I think a lot of people fall in love with it because there's that, like when you get something working, it works, and that's cool, right? Like like a puzzle is putting four pieces together and it forms something. Same kind of feeling, but it's technology. I think people get a lot more intimidated by technology because they think it's more complicated than it is.
Yeah, yeah. So, with that in mind, the reason why you like all that and are good with all that, I want to talk about Edward Tufte. So I found these 3 books, One Nations. So if you like very visual, clean books with pictures, information. So I started looking through these. Yes.
The visual display of quantitative information, his first book.
Yeah. So tell me about Edward Tufte and why you love him and what it means to the design world.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Before we do that, before I came here on my vacation, a friend of mine gave me this huge dipstick, which is like a joint rolled in a leaf dipped in wax with shake on it. So thank you, Rock Bud Industries. This is magic. Okay. Cut. Tufte. Yes.
So this particular book, and he's actually done, I think, 4, and he's coming out with a 4th book. So professor, or was a professor at Yale. And he's probably one of the leading thinkers in this area of the visual display of information of a variety of types. Each one kind of covers different forms of information. This book in particular has been called, I think by Business Week, one of the most important books of the 20th century, business books, but also it's really a creative book as well, which is one of the things I love about it. And it's all about how do you effectively display information in a variety of fields, education.
So let me. Ready.
Yes.
Let me ask a question. Was Edward Tufte like an architect? Was he a technical artist? What was his?
He's kind of like actually, he is. His research was really around visually displaying information. I believe. I don't know exactly what he taught in class. We could look that one up. But he's also an artist. Actually, he does large form art now, as he's retired from teaching. But he still runs his courses. His courses fill out all over the world that he does. He was at Yale, and now he goes out to the road. Like, so people can actually sign up for his webinars, which are full day sessions where he goes through a lot of the principles in the book. And they're generally packed with everyone from financial people to creative artists to geeks like me that actually design software to help visualize data, which is actually what I do in my day job, is build visualization tools to help display information. His book were founding principles behind the software that we actually built, and it's why I played the song from Sweden, because our software is built in Sweden. There's a lot of great visualization.
It all comes together.
So, this book was incredibly impactful. I read it for the first time 20 years ago. He talks about some of the greatest examples of visualization.
Show a couple.
Yeah.
Can you hold it up?
Yeah, I can. And I will, in fact, if you are, I was just looking this up, this one is the most famous, some would say, statistical visualization of all time. Here it is.
Most famous statistical visualization of all time.
Now, if you're online and you want to look it up, it's called Menard's March of Napoleon on Russia. And one very light line, and I'll show it like this one up top.
Yeah.
I'll show it to you.
Okay.
It shows the march of Napoleon in Russia in the war campaign against Russia. He famously entered into Russia to attack Moscow with the width of this line. You can see it here. The width of that line there represents the number of troops that he entered Russia with. And you can see the line dwindle. He entered with 422,000 troops. And as he entered Russia and continued on, he reached Russia with just 100,000. They had died along the way. This is when they did the famous scorched earth policy. If you've ever heard of scorched earth, what it means is as the Russians just retreated, and the weather and the temperature here on the bottom line, which you can also see down below, starts to plummet. And the Russians knew if they just retreated, burned all the wood, and
they would just die.
They would just die off. The black line here shows the retreat. So the black is the direction of the troops, and you can see it continue to dwindle. He left the campaign with just 10,000 troops.
Okay.
400. This shows 6 types of information in one graph. Yes. It tells the devastation of
and
war.
The temperature is very interesting. Did somebody say, hey, look at or did he just go, I'm going to measure temperature, number of soldiers, dates?
So this is one of the reasons why this is so famous. Is Tufte's whole principle is that great visual graphics are like great thought. Much like writing, Isaac Asimov.
Or art. Say so much. Yes.
Yeah, Isaac Asimov to say, writing is thinking through my fingers. And Tufte might say, building a visualization is thinking with graphs and pictures. So this was something that Menard created because he was an anti-war activist. And he wanted to create a visualization that showed people statistically the devastation of war. It actually became one of the most, if Twitter was around then, it would have been one of the most popular tweets in the 1800s. He actually was in the 1800s. And it really started to get people understanding the devastation, the impact, and human impact of war. And of course, that's Tufte's whole idea, is that a great visualization. And he goes all the way back to Aristotle and examples that were written in books that help people help convey great thoughts. And that's why it's such a really interesting field. And especially nowadays, where everything's a visualization. Think of all the graphs you've looked at.
Infographics.
Talk about pandemics. It's like there's something like there's some
here's
number
where
of
all
trillion.
The cases are. Yeah. Here's where the hot spots are. Yeah. Here's where travel is. Yeah, everything is.
I think there's something like 6 trillion visualizations generated a year for. It's an amazing number. So doing it well can really help change the world.
Right. And so many of them are just garbage.
And so many of them are garbage. And that's what that's why he spent so much time. I think he spent 7 years writing each one of these books. They're also how to make, they're totally self-published, but they're among the most popular books of all time. And they're beautiful. You notice. He's got parts that are some that are 3D where they it's like
you can pull out
sections pop out.
Pull out a pocket. It's beautiful.
You can
look at this. Yeah. Look at this. Watch this. What?
Yeah. So they print and make every one by hand, and it's really a remarkable artistic thing in and of itself. The book.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, is he still alive?
I have 3 times.
What?
And I have 3. That's why I have 3 copies of these books actually around the house, because you get them. They give them they give them out when you go to the session.
Okay, give me another example.
Good question. Let's see.
What is this one?
Randomly pull one out.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is that? This is something that I noticed right when I opened the book. So I don't know if you can tell, but it's like pictures of a man with a
that is a magic deck.
Oh, okay.
And again, it's an interesting point that you just made. Like I read last time, because that's a great visualization, I knew exactly what it was.
Yes.
And you can actually see the whole setup for a magic act. The man, this guy sitting down below. Right. Yeah, it's the cutting in half, but he's hidden in the box that shows you exactly how to set up the box, so you can saw them in half and see here's the outside of the trick on the other page if you want to show it, and that's the inside.
Gosh. Here we go.
And the power that he's showing really just through two simple visualizations, you can figure out the whole act, right? At a glance, without having to say, when you get instructions from put together something for my game. So it's all pictures, and and that's what these books are. They're just example after example of great examples. Oh, and of course, this one's very famous. This is the Space Shuttle Challenger. And unfortunately, it's the anti-example of a good visualization.
I can't bend this. Okay, there we go.
What he goes through in the book is he breaks down the visualizations that were used by the science team to try to convince them not to launch the Challenger, which of course blew up very famously. And see here, you can actually see what he does is he actually goes through the visualizations used to be convincing in a way that's obvious. It's like if when you see his redone visualizations, you said they were nuts to launch. Job at the visualizations, he argues, would have saved lives and averted one of the bigger disasters we've ever had in terms of space exploration. It's just an example of the book is very much example driven, and they're from real stories over history and time. So it also makes it kind of interesting too. He goes back to, like I said, I think Aristotle made forms of the visualizations he uses.
What is this? What's this one?
Well, let's see.
This one.
Do you know that I don't remember that one, but it's obviously the actually in French. Yeah, it's the bone structure in the skeleton and how when a human walks, what actually happens in a time phase. Kind of before there was time lapse photography. It's a visual depiction of it.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a really fun book to read and linger over because the visualizations, they're very dense with.
Where's that? Stuff. Oh, never mind.
The comic book one?
Yes, where is that? Did I get that out and not?
Yeah, you did. I think I put it back up top. It's up top. It's comic.
Oh, okay. I have to tell you that, so I've realized I love every book I see, and I was telling Mark a couple days ago, I'm like, oh, there's this one book that I got from the library. I kept getting it out. I loved it. And I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if I gave it away or whatever, but it was showing what makes comics work. And then I come into his office and it's here.
Was it the same book that you were looking
at? This is the exact example of the faces. Like,
what
is a face?
There
it is. Okay,
so this book too, while you're finding it, was also on. I love to read like the top books of the 20th century or something, right? And this was actually on it. And you might think, oh, comic books, they're for kids, but there's actually really a high visual art, if that makes sense.
Oh no, it's
a great comic. And he basically, this is a meta book, if you will. This is a comic book about how to make a great use comic books to convey.
It's a comic book that teaches you about comic books. I'm obsessed with this book.
And it's again one of it's well cited as one of the top. And of course,
brilliant.
It's it's a very, very different genre. If you
it is meta. It's a comic book.
Yeah.
And when you're reading it, it's so self-aware. It's talking to you. It knows it's talking. The book version, the comic book fourth wall, just like, I'm teaching you about this now. Look at me over here.
Yep.
It's wonderful.
So
one of the things that we should have talked about before, because we're on Facebook Live. So we're on Facebook Live. We're in Mark's office, so you can see this, and we're showing pictures. But on the podcast, obviously, you can't see the pictures. So I'm going to post pictures of Edward Tufte and Scott McCloud, and I'll include them in hashtags. But man, if you love books, I guess, that are in math. If you like books about drawing, if you like books about data, all of these books, Edward Tufte library. It's a wonderful thing. So any more examples that you want? Do you want one last example to go out on from Tufte? What is
Sure,
this?
sure.
Yeah.
Let's go with the first. Let's go with the first book.
A
Just
first
pick one
book.
random.
A first
Pick
book.
one randomly and we'll kind of skip through and see if there's some.
Okay.
You know, one of the things, I don't know if it'll come up here, that he talks about is the beauty of train schedules. Very
Oh,
challenging
yes,
to,
yes.
and I don't think I'll bring one up here right away, but you know,
It really is beautiful, even just thinking about when you're in a big train station, just looking at every and knowing what to do, or supposedly knowing what to do. But the first time you see one, it's you oh, green, east. It just kind of all starts falling into place.
Okay,
Yesterday, Casey and I were talking about we were driving around. We had to go from Long Beach into New York, and we were talking about how kids don't know how to use a map. They only know how to use GPS. And Casey and I sold books door to door together and drove back and forth across the country a bunch of times. And we're used to having a big old atlas in our lap, which she and I and our friend Nikki were obsessed with atlases. Like we could get them out, blow them up, and we knew how to get all the way, how to find that hotel in the panel of or whatever, just land in a town and be like, this town is about this big, there's a couple high schools, and it was understanding how much information, how many people could sell there, all of that. Do you want to look at these?
Yeah, I want to find one particularly better
Okay.
while you're saying that, because it's
Yeah, so anyway, when I was thinking about talking about this today, I realized I really miss looking at atlases because we're here in Long Beach and I can't figure out what direction we are. I can't picture exactly where we are. And it's a bummer because I haven't looked at a map in so long. So map, great example of a visual representation of data. So Mark is finding our final example here.
Well, I won't find the one that I was looking for, which is actually the John Gotti murder rap sheet. Which there it is.
I saw it.
John Gotti. And this is basically an example of a visualization that put a game.
Okay. And so when he made these visualizations, did someone commission him to do it, or did he just do it?
So what this is actually he basically goes through, and here's the page. It's in envisioning information.
Envisioning information.
And you can see, just a little bit of the history. So basically, it's also a little bit of a history book, right?
Yeah.
So he goes through. This is the history, and this is the actual visualization. I'll try to share it. Big chart, right? And this is the actual one that was used during the trial to convict.
Oh my gosh! Really?
And
so what does it say?
And it says there's just this very simple table. So this isn't highfalutin visualization, but it shows on the rows are a list of crimes, and on the columns are the informants that were used to actually, this one I have to go backwards. This actually got Gotti off of the trial that he was on here.
What?
So what the defense did was they made of crimes and then the informants that were used during the trial.
Oh my God.
You can see these X's that mark off, and it basically says, look at how credible these guys are in one chart. Like all these X's are things that these guys were convicted of. And my favorite or least favorite is this guy, Pelosi, who's, if you can see it, he's X'd off more times than anybody. And his list of offenses include cocaine possession and sale, possession of dangerous weapons, and pistol whipping a priest. Yeah.
So they're saying, like, see how these are not credible because they're already criminals.
How can you believe anything? It's just a very simple visualization. And then one last one that
you have to go get the book so you can look these up.
Yeah, and then he talks about the theory of how they created it. This is a history of music.
That? Oh,
and a lot of people probably have seen this one.
Y'all, we're looking at page 90 in visual explanations.
Right, and it shows the evolution of music, starting with, or actually rock and roll, right? Starting in the 50s with shock rock and
My friend
rockabilly.
JB will love this.
Yeah, and then you can start to see like these new forms, these new genres, like bubblegum, folk rock, starting in the mid '60s, and all of the dominant artists that sort of of those movements. Country rock, soft soul. Of course, disco comes up, and heavy metal, and
But when
glitter.
did he write this?
So this was a visualization. I don't even know. I don't think. Yeah, he did not. Again, this is a visualization he did not create, but he analyzes it. And he shows why it's such a great. Because you can actually sit over this visualization. It's a lot of fun, and figure out who of your favorite artists or which genre and when they kind of wrote and how they wrote it to other people. So it's it's a lot of it's another famous one. I've seen people have this one on their wall, as many of them. So anyways, that's another fun example.
Yeah. Well, awesome.
Geeking out with visual explanations.
Geeking out with it. So visual explanation that I've been needing to look up is
map.
Where we are. Apparently, we're somewhere right here. This is the land of the volleyball and the boardwalk and the.
It's the Rio de Janeiro of New York. They call it
Rio de Janeiro of New York City on the city. It's really cool. Oh yeah, we were in Atlantic Beach, and then where's Oceanside? Where's that?
Oceanside is just up to the north.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Wonderful. Ta-da! So we're live from here. I'm pointing at a map. For those of you just listening, I'm pointing at a map of Long Beach, New York. I promise every episode that I'm not going to do visual references on the next, and then it just happens. It just happens. So thanks so much to Mark Palmer and Casey Palmer. Palmer, give a shout out. Hey. And for letting us stay. It's so wonderful here. I never want to leave.
Our pleasure.
And yeah, and this was our little mini-sode of Reads and Weeds about Edward Tufte and Scott McCloud. And later.